Hello student, in this lecture we learn about the plant hormones and plant movements. As you know, unlike animals, plants they don't have nervous system. So plant uses chemical means for control and coordination. Many plant hormones are responsible for various kinds of movements in the plants. So movements in plants can be divided into two main types: tropical movements and mastic movements. Now look at this flowchart. By this flowchart, we can easily know that tropical movements are directional movements in response to the stimulus, whereas movements which are immediate response to stimulus are the mastic movements. So movement in plants can be of two types: growth dependent movements called the tropical movements, which are towards or away from the stimulus, and non-growth dependent movements called the mastic movements, which are independent of the stimulus. So as you know, tropical movements are growth dependent movements. They can be classified into five types: phototropism in response to light, geotropism in response to gravity, hydrotropism in response to water, chemotropism in response to chemicals, and thigmotropism in response to touch. So these are the five types of tropical movements, which may be away or towards the stimulus. Accordingly, they will be known as positive or negative tropical movements. Now we'll study all the tropical movements in detail. The first is phototropism. So it is a movement of plant in response to light. So stimulus here is the light. The shoot system of a plant exhibits this characteristics, and the shoot moves towards the light. So shoot is positively phototrophic. And what about the roots? Roots, they move away from the light, so they are of course negatively phototrophic. Next comes the geotropism. So it is a movement of a plant part towards the soil. This is a characteristics of the root system. The root always moves in the direction of the earth's gravity. So they are positively geotropic and negatively phototrophic. Next type of tropical movements are hydrotropism and chemotropism. Hydrotropism, it is a movement of a plant towards the water. The stimulus here is water. So roots, because they grow towards the water, they are positively hydrotrophic. Chemotropism, so it is the movement of plants in response to a chemical stimulus. So classical example of this type of movement is in the growth of the pollen tube by the pollen towards the ovule during the fertilization in a flower. As the pollen falls on the stigma, it starts growing in the form of a pollen tube towards the ovule. So this is a kind of chemotropical movement. The last is the thigmotropism. It is a directional movement in plant in response to the touch. So the stimulus here is touch. For example, the plant tendrils climb towards any support which they touch. So this tendril movement is example of the thigmotropism. This was all about the tropical movements. Now comes the mastic movements. Mastic movements, as you know, in plants are non-directional movement. So they occur irrespective of the stimulus. They are not dependent on the stimulus and are growth independent, because no growth occurs in such movements. For example, the leaves of a touch-me-not plant, which is known as Mimosa pudica, fold up immediately when you touch it. These kinds of changes occurs due to the change in the amount of water in the leaves. So depending on the quantity, they either swell up or shrink. So this is the example of mastic movements. So in this diagram, you can see the various types of tropical and mastic movements. Now let us start the plant hormones. So control and coordination in plants are carried out by hormones. Plant hormones, also known as phytohormones, are responsible for the control and coordination of plants. There are different types of hormones which affect the growth of a plant. Phytohormones or the plant hormones are chemical compounds which are released by stimulated cells. These hormones are diffused around the plant cells. They have a role to play in the cell division, cell enlargement, cell differentiation, fruit growth, falling of leaves, ripening of fruits, aging of plants, etc. So the different types of phytohormones are auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins, abscisic acid. There is one more phytohormone known as ethylene, which is gaseous phytohormone and helps in plant in many functions. Let's study all the phytohormones in details. So auxin, it has many functions. It helps in the apical dominance. That means helps the apical tissue of the plant to grow more. So helps in the growth of the plant tissue. Cytokinins, it promotes the cell division and delays the aging of the cells. Gibberellins helps in growth of the stems, initiates seed germination, promotes flowering, cell division and seed growth after germination. Abscisic acid is also known as the stress hormone because it imparts negative effect on the plants. For example, it inhibits the growth and causes wilting of the leaves and promotes dormancy of buds and seeds. Ethylene, this is a gaseous hormone which causes ripening of the fruits. Now, let's answer a simple question. Name a plant hormone that promotes growth, and how does it promote the growth of a tendril around a support? Yes, auxin promotes the growth in the plants. They are synthesized in the shoot tips of the plant. As tendrils are present at the shoot tips, so the main hormone associated with it will be auxin. When a plant tendril comes in contact with the support, the auxins at the tip of the tendril stimulate faster growth of the cells, thus making the tendril grow faster and have a coiled appearance. So this is the important question related to the topic tropical movements and hormones. So in this way, control and coordination in plants occurs. Hope you have understood the lecture. Thank you. Have a nice day.